Thank you so much for those who have joined us today. This is like a lunchtime webinar whereby we look at how to really get our research published. And this is an opportunity for us to interact with Professor Jason Carr, who is the editor of Journal of Transportation Research Part D. Professor Jason specializes in land use and transport interaction and the effect of ICT on travel behavior and planning for quality of life. He is internationally well known for his research on residential self-selection in the relationship between the built environment and travel behaviors. His recent work focuses on using machine learning to address the nonlinear relationship in land use transport research. Jason leads research development in field of planning and transportation by editing journals and special issues. He is the co-editor in chief of Transportation Research Part D, a leading journal in transportation research, and an associate editor of transport policy. He gets edited 8 issues for 6 journals, including Journal of Regional Sciences, Journal of Transport and Land Use, Transport Policy, Transportation Letters, and Travel Behavior and Society. So it's a pleasure to have him here. I've published before in the Journal of Transportation Part D, and I know how rigorous it can be and the quality of the feedback that they provide. So my name is Emmanuel Mogaji. I'm an associate professor at Keele University in the UK and also a part of TRATSEDI. And we brought this together as a form of learning and to also engage with editors to really understand what they are looking for and how best to present, how best to position our paper and to enhance the publication chances, especially for many of us that are coming from developing countries struggling with research. So we really want to understand what it takes, how we can improve our journals and how to make it better. So Professor Jason, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel. And maybe you can share the slides so I can present the slides.
So I assume you sent it to my email, right?
Yeah, I sent it to your email, yes.
Okay, that's fine. Let me look for it. Okay, I think I've got it.
And before I present the publishing tips, I want to briefly introduce the journal. So in that case, give you some background information and then why I want to talk about those issues. For the Transport Research Part D, and this journal has 2 editor-in-chiefs, me and also Professor Ian Ge, and from Chang'an University, China. And I just want to briefly talk about the scope of this journal. This journal focuses on the interaction between transportation and the environment. It ranges from the local to global impacts. It covers the area in terms of travel behavior, air quality, ecosystem, road ecology, global climate, public health, land use, economic development, and quality life. And also, it includes all modes of transportation, including cars, trucks, air, maritime, non-motorized modes, and railroad. And particularly, this journal focuses on 2 aspects. One is, in terms of the transportation policies that have a clear environmental impact, and also we want to see the empirical research that informs the environment-related policies. And you should know, the TRATSEDI is a policy journal, so that means, we generally we do not publish the method-oriented work. So that means you want to make sure your research starts with a policy question and also ends with a policy question. And if you are not really sure about the scope of this journal, you can always send your abstract to the EIC. So in that case, we can take a look and give you some initial judgment. Did you share the slides?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm trying to I'm struggling with it as well.
Okay. So while you're doing, and then I just also, even though I gave you kind of the broader definition of the scope of this journal, and I want to emphasize some primary areas of this journal. For example, we have a lot of papers focusing on the alternative fuel vehicles, particularly the electric vehicles. and carbon emissions and air quality, and also the travel behavior with the environment implication. We also have some niche areas, for example, the maritime transportation and noise, pavement, aviation, road ecology, emerging technology, and all of those should have some components of the environmental dimensions. And we also have a section, it's called disaster resilience. So that's really focused on the kind of the climate change and disasters, adaptation and resilience. And recently, we broadened our scope by including the papers on the people's well-being and also the equity. The equity is about the environmental justice. Okay, next slide. And here I will show you some statistics for the 2023. And in terms of the impact factor, it is 7.6. During the past several years, we have seen steady increase in the impact factor. For us, we don't really care about the impact factor because, we focus on the quality of paper. But for some countries, scholars do emphasize the impact factor. So that means I give you the statistics. And also we have the SET score is 12.3. According to the SET score, the TRATSEDI is ranked among the top journals in civil engineering, environmental science, and transportation. And also I want to give you some sense about the processing time. And the median time for the first round decision is about 8 weeks. This is the median. So if we think about this follows a normal distribution, and then some paper will use fewer time, and then others may take longer, for the first round decision. And then for the final round is about 96 days. And in 2023, we received more than 2,800 papers. And in terms of the acceptance rate, the rate is 13%. And for the paper who signed out for the peer review, and then also have 16% of the paper being rejected after peer review, and that rejection is about 71%. And this is a little bit, this is slightly higher than other TRC review journals. And then for the death rejects, here are the key reasons for the death rejection. This is based on the statistics from Jason and from me, and also from Professor Yin Ge. About 35% of submission are out of scope, and 9% because of the minor or the major plagiarism, and 7% of the paper poorly written, and also about 10% paper, we don't see clear novelty, the unique contribution to literature, and also we have 4% of the paper were that's rejected for other reasons. Okay, next. And now I'm going to give you some tips based on the question raised by Amar New. And so first one is, if you want your paper to have a broader audience and also well received by reviewer and editor, it's better for you to draft your paper from the perspective of discipline instead of the country of your case study. Because as an international journal, we care about how your work advances the field, not for the interest of a particular country. If this is something is really unique to your own country, and it's going to be difficult, to sell to the international reviewers. And the second one is, it's better for you to understand the journal scope and also the characteristics of the reviewer pool, because some journals are really kind of engineering based, some journals are the methods based orientated, and some journals are the policy orientated. And if your paper is has a strong method orientation, and if you send to a journal with a policy orientation, and it's likely to be distracted. And also because for certain journal, we have the reviewer pool, and then those reviewers may have certain expertise. So if we do not have some people who can deal with the methods, and then a method paper will not proceed well in this journal. And the third point I would say is, before you publish paper, it's better for you to read at least three recent and relevant papers published in journal, and it's better to cite them actually. The reason is first, if you have the recent paper, let's set up the foundation to inform the reader, to inform the reviewer, your paper is cutting edge. because if your the most recent citation is from 2000, and then you don't really know what's happening during the last 3 years, it's going to be difficult to sell to the reviewer. Your work is really cutting edge, and also because when we say the relevant paper, that means your paper is kind of within the scope of this this journal, because the journal has published the similar papers before. And the third one is the corresponding author of those paper could be the potential reviewer for your paper. So that's the reason it's very important for you to cite some papers for the journal, and also cite the papers out which is really related to your paper. And then the next one is, in the introduction, it's very important for you to propose your specific research question, because for the reviewers, we really want to see, your research questions. So in that case, when we review the paper, we will have those questions in mind. And also, it's very important to highlight your unique contribution. So, this is not just a case study. This study is going to advance the field, but in what way, right? So this is very important for you to state in the introduction to give the reviewer a clear understanding about your work. And also, this help the reviewer, because their job is not to help you to find the unique contribution, but just to evaluate whether or not your work, can substantiate the unique contribution. And furthermore, when you highlight your unique contribution, and then that's going to control the reviewer's mindset, because when they review the paper, they will think about your research question and then your unique contribution. So that means they will not, just let their mind move freely, and then it's going to narrow their focus. It's going to help, your review process. And the next point is, when you write a paper, don't write a very long paper, because a long paper may exhaust the reviewer. That in this case, it may produce the negative outcome to your work. We don't, for the TRATSEDI, we don't really have a specific length, but for my own experience, it's better to have a paper range from the 6,000 to 8,000 words, including the tables and figures. At most, maybe 10,000. If you write a long paper, that's going to be really difficult for the reviewers to review the paper. And also another point is, because many of you are also international scholars, so in that case, it's very important for you to polish your English before submission, because if the reviewers cannot understand your paper, and then the readers will be even more difficult, because the reviewers are really the expert in your field. So in this case, it's better to have the editorial service before sending your paper out for review. Next slide. And for the previous slides, I just gave you some kind of the fundamental information, the general information about tips. But here, I will just give you some specific advice for a few parts of the paper. The first one is the title. I think the title is really critical, because that's the first thing the editor and reviewer can see. And so in this case, it's better to have a concise and short title, because the research shows a short title will have more downloads. That's going to increase the impacts of your work. And also, it's easier to for the reviewer and editor to understand the concepts of your paper. If you write a long one, and then we may have to think about, okay, what is the paper about? And then the second key point for the title is, this one should be informative. So the title should have the important keywords, associated with your work. So in that case, based on title, the reviewers and editor can guess, what's going on in your work. And so sometimes people may feel, this is a little bit silly, but when they see the papers submitted to TRATSEDI, we do see a lot of papers. We don't see a clear focus. We don't really know what's going on within the paper. And also trying to avoid the jargon and acronyms in the title, because they may become the barrier for the editor and the reviewers to understand the content of your paper. Because the jargon and acronym, some people may be familiar with them, but many others may not know them. So in that case, this will be a barrier for your publication. And the third dimension, this one is desirable, but it's not necessary, because if you have a really kind of a narrative title, and then it's going maybe it's a little bit boring, because when you have a paper, it's very important for you to make it more attractive, interesting, and we can think about this is a hook. So in that case, it's going to attract the reader's interest. Here, I just give you one example. Actually, this study is really trying to understand the connection between the building environment and travel behavior, in American suburbs. When we think about the title for this paper, we just intentionally choose, ineffective building environment interventions, because I think if we use this title, and then that may make the reader wonder, okay, why, it is effective, and then what are they, right? So that in case, the readers will have the interest of reading the paper. Okay, so can you do the slideshow?
Okay, slideshow. Can you see it?
Okay. Yes. And then the next slide. And the next point I want to make is, no, the abstract. The abstract is really important because, for the TRATSEDI, we receive more than 2,800 papers. So that means, we don't really spend a lot of time for each paper, and then the test rejection maybe just within a few minutes. So it's very important for you to have an abstract that is grammatically correct and also consistent. If we see a lot of grammatical errors in your abstract, and then, we just don't have the confidence of your work. So in that case, we may test reject your paper because of the English. And also for the abstract, it's very important, to cover the following questions. This is also tell you kind of the contents of abstract. The first one is, you want to tell us what's the issue addressed, and also why it is important for the research policy or the practice. You want to set up the foundation. This work is really critical to publish. And then the second part is, you want to tell the reviewer and also the audience, what methods and data you used for your analysis. And also you want to talk about your main research finding. Okay, don't list all of them, and then just kind of the key ones. And finally, you want to talk about the key conclusions for the policy practice and implications for the future research. So this is kind of the general content, for a policy-oriented paper. And if you write a method-oriented paper, so in that case, you may see a little bit of variation, but still, it's very important to show the importance of your work, and also to tell the main result of your work. Okay, the next slide. And the literature review is really the most difficult part to write for the paper, and because you need to read a lot of papers and also cite many papers. But apparently you cannot cite, say 100 papers for a single paper. In that case, when you choose the paper to cite, you need to be a little bit selective, and you can click. So what papers should you cite? Can you click? First, you want to set the new studies. So this is also trying to give the reviewer the impression that your work is cutting edge. Because if you do not set new studies, and then it's difficult for them to justify the cutting edge of your work. And the second is, it's very important for you to set the classic papers in the field. Otherwise, the reviewer may say, your literature review is not comprehensive because you omit very important scholars in this field. And the third one is, you want to set the papers in the targeted journals. So in that case, you can set up the foundation, for the paper to be within the scope. And for the TR-D, we don't really ask you to set papers in the TR-D, but it's very important for you to set the papers in the mainstream journals of transportation research. And the next point is, you need to set papers from top journals. If you said, if the papers you set are really from the third-tier journal, and then it's going to be difficult for us to see, this is really kind of the innovative work. And you can also set some potential reviewers' work, because when you submit a paper at a certain stage, the LCV will ask you, to recommend the reviewers. Next slide. And then when you submit the recommended reviewer, it's very important for you to understand the meaning of the conflict of interest. Here, I just give you some example. For example, you cannot recommend a reviewer who have the knowledge of your submission. For example, maybe your friend sent you an email saying, I'm submitting a paper to a journal, and then lists you as a reviewer. So in this case, this is the conflict of interest. You shouldn't do that. The second one is the reviewer should not have recent collaboration with any of the authors, because they also have some interest with your work, and then they may have the best review. The third one is the reviewer shouldn't be a student advisor of any of the authors. And the last one is this reviewer shouldn't be shouldn't be your colleague, right? So in the same institution. And so all of this become the conflict of interest. And but also, we highly recommend you to include one member of the editorial board, because they are our trust name, and also they have the obligation to review the paper. So in that case, they are more likely to accept the review invitation, and also provide some kind of the very I would say, we just trust their review. And here we also recommend you to suggest some reviewer who are kind of the rising scholar, because they are either kind of the senior assistant professor or maybe a junior associate professor, and the editors may not know them. And but this person is really kind of rising star in the field, and then this is the best person to review a paper. So in that case, it's going to help us to find the right reviewers. And but you may ask, after we have this deliberation and then come up with the reviewers, and then whether or not we will use the recommended reviewer. And I would say this really depends on the editor. There are some editor will use some of them, some may not use them at all, because they feel the reviewer you recommended have certain kind of interest with you, right? And so in this case, how can you avoid this situation? One thing you can do is, in your when you set author's paper, and then you can try to set the potential reviewers. For example, as an editor, when I exhaust the option, and then I may look at the your reference list, and then I find, for example, this scholar's name appear twice or three times, and also, when I look at the title, this title is really similar to your work, and then this person will be a potential reviewer for your work. So in this case, this is the choice of the editor, and then it's not recommended by you, and then so this will have a better chance of have this paper reviewed. But this practice may not work every single time. But if you do this for every single paper, and then the chance will on your part. Okay, next. And for the literature review, a common issue with the literature review is, some scholars, they write a paper, write a review like this. This scholar, use this data, find this evidence, and then the second author using this data, and then find the evidence, and at least, for example, 8 studies, and then the review is complete. So in this case, this is not a review. This is kind of a narrative presentation of the author's work. For a review, it's very important for you to critique. So, because, first, I want to show your understanding. If you don't understand the paper, and then can you critique others' work? Apparently not, right? And then the second one is, it's very important for you to highlight others' contribution, because, the scholars have done some great work, and then you need to acknowledge their contribution to the field. But you cannot say all the good words to the reviewer. You also need to identify the weakness, or maybe we can say the gaps in the literature. If all the papers are good, then your paper has, it's not useful, right? So in that case, it's critical for the literature review is, after reviewing the existing evidence, you need to identify the gaps, and then also state the importance of filling this gap. Otherwise, if we don't fill the gap, and then it's going to have very important consequence for the transportation planning and practice. And another issue associated with the literature review is, you need to have a strong theme. So in this case, it is kind of strong and also consistent. You don't want to talk about the method, the first paragraph, and second paragraph, you talk about the findings, and third paragraph, you talk about some controversies. If you mix all of these things together, and then that's going to make the review not readable, and then it's going to negatively affect the review outcome. Next slide. Also, in terms of how to frame and write a paper, and the first point I want to make is, even though when we do the research, we have this kind of the forward looking, right? So that means, we have the literature review, and then we have the literature review, and then we conduct study, and then we have the result, right? So in this case, we do have a kind of hypothesis before we conduct the research. But if the result of your work is different from your original hypothesis, then how should you deal with that, right? So in this case, it's very important, yes, I do have a hypothesis, but my result may differ from the hypothesis. And then you want to look at your result. Are they are they kind of plausible? And if yes, and then you may have to reshape your work. Don't use the previous literature review, and then you need to come up with a new review based on your most important results, and then to make your hypothesis and also your results consistent. So this is really critical. Okay, so for example, when I advise my doctoral students, I will let them to write the result section first, and then give me 2 bullet points in the conclusion, because these 2 bullet points are really the key results for this study. And if I agree with this is kind of the most important finding, and then I will ask the student, to write the review, because when the students write the review, and then no matter what, finally they will come up to this final 2 bullet points, because this is a research gap. The work is going to fill, right? And then after that, and then because the students has already read a lot of papers, based on this new review, and then he can, trying to polish the result section and also finish the conclusion section. So in this case, you can see, when I advise my student to do to write a paper, actually I really start from the latter part of the work instead of write the paper from the beginning. And the second point I want to make is, when you write a paper, it's better to have the first sentence as the main points of the paragraph. You have a paragraph, it covers a lot of information, but if we don't have a clear, if we don't see the clear idea, the main idea of this paragraph, it's going to take the reviewer a lot of time. So if you put the first sentence as the main idea of your paragraph, it's going to help the reviewer to understand the key message of this paragraph trying to convey. And also they can judge whether or not, all the statement within this paragraph will support the first sentence. This point is really critical for the third bullet is, when you write a paper, it's very important for you to have a good logic. So what is a good logic? And, thinking about the literature review section, this is the section, need the logic the most. For example, maybe what you can do is you can take the first sentence of all the paragraphs out, and then you read it, and then you want to see whether or not this is a fluent essay. If it is fluent and smooth, and then probably you have a good logic, right? Because each single sentence is the main idea of that paragraph, and then you connect all of the main idea together, and then it's essay, and then it shows potential for the logic. And the second of the part of the logic is after reading the previous paragraph, it's natural for you to come up with the first sentence of next paragraph, because we want to see a smooth transition between paragraphs. And the third point for the good logic is, because the first sentence is the main idea of this paragraph, you want to make sure all the statements within this sentence will support the first sentence, and also you need to think about why this sentence come before the other sentence and then the other come after the next sentence. You want to see this internal logic. But among all of the three logics, I think the most important one is really the first level. You want to make sure the first sentence of each paragraph, they are well connected with each other, because some reviewers, they may not pay much attention to the details of your paragraphs, but apparently, they want to understand what I want to say. So, that's really kind of the first sentence of each paragraph play a really important role. Okay, next slide. And for the part D, each year we just reject about 10% of the paper for the plagiarism. And then here I just want to give you some introduction about the plagiarism, because at least from the Chinese perspective, the definition of the plagiarism really kind of different from the plagiarism of the Western countries. And so I just want to make it clear, because when you submit a paper to an international journal, you need to follow the standards, the international standards. So what is the plagiarism? Plagiarism is to use others' words or ideas without giving them appropriate credit. Because here I want to tell you, for the first two bullet points, those are really from my advisor, Dr. Patricia McTarrant. Otherwise, I plagiarize, right? Actually, the plagiarism can happen in two ways. One is, you present an idea, but you don't cite anybody, right? And then the second one is you cite the source for your idea, but you use the source exact words without including them in the quotation marks. Okay, so this is really critical, because many of the papers fall into the second category, because they know, when I borrow idea from others, I need to cite them, but how to cite them appropriately, this can be really critical. And if you want to know more about the plagiarism, and here I give you a URL, and then you can check the website to have a better understanding. Next slide. Next. And here I just want to give you one example. In the previous slides, you see, one of my paper published years ago, and then I will just use that example to show you, what is considered plagiarism. And here you see this yellow highlighted sentence. You don't really need to read it, and then just give you, this is a sentence, from abstract. Okay, next slide. And as a scholar, you find this topic is really interesting, and then you collect data analysis, and then come up with a paper. And then this sentence is within one paragraph of your paper. So in this case, if you write like this, then it's not work, because this because you used my idea but did not give me any citation, right? So this is not correct. And then what can we do next? When you use others' work, it's very important for you to cite. But in this case, we see the citation, but will this work well? But actually, this is, for the second bullet points, this one falls into the second type of the plagiarism, because you use others' exact words without including them in the quotation mark. For the international readers, if they don't see the quotation mark, they think, this sentence is from is yours. But actually, this sentence is not yours; it's mine, right? So this is considered second plagiarism. And then how can we do next? Next slide. Click. Yes. Here you can see, now it's much better, because we have already put the sentence within the quotation mark. But this is not adequate. You need to provide the page number, because some authors, they want to check the original, the paper, and then to fully understand the meaning of this sentence. So in this case, it's going to help the reader, to find the sentence. But if you read the whole paper this way, it's not going to work, because if you say, okay, Professor A, conclude a quotation mark, and Professor B find a quotation mark, Professor C find a quotation mark, and then this is not really your work, right? Because you are just kind of the copy and pasting, right? So it's very important for you to paraphrase. But how can we paraphrase? Let's look at the fourth the bullet, and you can see, this is somewhat different from the previous sentence, but this one still does not work, because what you do is really just change the location of the words and also, change the less to more. In this case, it's still considered plagiarism. And actually, when you just copy a sentence and just changing a few words, that's still considered plagiarism. So, for the author, it's very important. It's very important for you to paraphrase it. And then the last one is, example give you, I feel, this one should be okay, because I read the sentence and then I understand it from my own mind, and then I rewrote it, right? So in this case, I think, the last one should be fine. Next slide. And here, I give you kind of a live example of the plagiarism. For example, if you look at the upper part, and you see, the author said the paper is called Stern 2000, right? So said the paper, but when you check the pattern of the sentence, apparently, the author, just changed a few words of those two sentences, and then but didn't paraphrase them appropriately. So in this case, this is still considered plagiarism. And then, for the lower part of the paragraph, and then in this case, you can see, the paper, the tool highlight some phrases and also some sentences. But in this case, we don't feel, this is the plagiarism, because the machine can always capture some common words and common statement from others. And so, we don't treat the lower part as plagiarism, but we treat the upper part as a plagiarism. And then sometimes the authors may also ask us, okay, what's your threshold for the similarity rate, right? So when you consider this is plagiarism, and then I tell the author, I don't just look at the similar rate, because, for example, we have a paper, with a 20% plagiarism, 20% of similarity rate, but this one may be free of the plagiarism because there's just a lot of overlaps in terms of common phrase. And then another paper will say, 11% of the similarity rate. But if you just copied, kind of a few sentences or one paragraph from other papers, and then, even though your similarity rate is not high, but this is still considered the plagiarism. So don't risk your career, for the plagiarism, because, once we find out plagiarism, if the paper is published, and then we may extract the paper, and then that's going to ruin your reputation. And then if this is happened during the kind of the editing stage, and then if this is a first violation, we just put a mark under your name. But if you violate the policy twice, and then we will discourage you from submission, because we don't trust your future work. And I think this is the last slide of my presentation. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. So here I just kind of give you some, I think it's very important for the international scholars, to think about how to publish in a top journal, and also how to avoid the common pitfalls associated with submission. And then now I think I can open the floor for the questions.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. Even me as a published author, I've been able to learn something from this, especially the writing backward and also the starting of a paragraph. So I think this is very interesting. So we've got about 13 minutes for questions. So if you have any question, please, you can raise up your hand or you can put it in the chat. But maybe I will start with my own question, Jason. What do you think of research from developing countries finding its place in international journal? Do you think there is a bias against works, let's say from Africa, or you think we are not just doing a good job? What's your experience about this?
Okay, first, I would say we do have a bias, but this bias is in favor of the African countries, because we don't see a lot of papers in the in Africa, and then we really want to understand what's going on there, and also we want to see how to improve the transportation infrastructure, so that it means we have a sustainable future, right? So that it means we tend to publish paper in African countries, and also we would like to see more submission from the African countries. So
Okay.
that's the reason I say it's in favor of the African scholar. But the issue with the publication is sometimes I think, maybe, the African scholars are not trained as the Western scholar, and then the reviewer are the Western scholars. So they want to use this standard to judge your work, right? So in that case, you want to make sure, your research design and also your method is kind of consistent with the international standard. And the second one is, you want to make sure your work is, towards the field, right? So not just think about just a single country. And then maybe, your work, for example, the result may not be applicable to for example, the United States. But if your work can be applied to other African countries, that's still doable, right? So that means, we definitely want to see a case study has a broader impact instead of just a local impact.
Local. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I guess the point is we don't need to think small. We need to think global. So even though we are coming from one country, we should be able to think big and to see how this insight can be applied elsewhere. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. So think about maybe this is if.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, if this was applicable to other countries in Africa, I think that still work. And maybe think about other developing countries, then that still work, right? But if your work is only applicable to your own country, and then that could be an issue because we don't see others can learn from our work.
From you. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Ayat, you've raised up your hand. Can you speak? Ayat. Hello? Ayat, can you speak? I think your mic is on. Okay. While we're still waiting for other questions, so Jason, I just want to ask, how do you get reviewers for these articles? How do you improve the pool of reviewers in the journal? Because like you said, if I'm doing a journal, if I'm doing a study in Africa, I would love an African to sort of read it. How do you increase the pool of reviewers in your journal?
Oh, I mean, this is a very good question, but also I would say this is difficult because, for example, it's not just about Africa and also about the South America. We don't see a lot of scholars published in the international journals. Also, maybe they may publish 1 or 2 papers. So in this case, they don't establish themselves in the international society, and then it's going to be tough for us to know who will be the right person to review this paper. So that's the reason I think you play a very important role because, for example, if I see paper is really, from Africa and also somewhat related to your field, and then I would invite you to review the paper, right? Because, I would say, it's very important for the African scholars, if they want to become the reviewer, if they want to become the EAB, the editorial board member, you should engage with the international society, by publishing and also by attending the conference in Europe or maybe in the United States. So in that case, at least let others know you, right? But so one is your presence in those events, and second one is you should have the kind of consistent and high quality work in this journal. So in that case, you will become an established scholar, and then they will invite you.
Wow, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ayat, can you speak now?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I thought it wasn't working. So my question is, how many reviewers is enough or is ethical? Because I understand that while trying to get a reviewer for your work, sometimes you might want to have 2 or 3 people to be sure of this, because sometimes you might not get a reviewer that will have the time that is in your own field. For example, if you are looking for someone who will help you review a project in electric mobility, and the person who is available is a scholar in, let's say, for example, that is specialized in other aspects of transport. So is it ethical to look for 2 to 3 reviewers for a particular paper, or it's just one should just stick to one person?
Thank you.
You know,
So
the connection is not very well, and then I'm not sure I fully, understand the
okay,
question.
so
But
if I can clarify, how many reviewers would you use for a paper?
to make a decision, in general, we need at least 2 reviewers.
Two.
If the
Okay.
2 reviewers give us a consistent outcome, for example, maybe both major revision or maybe a major and minor, and then we can make a decision. But if these 2 reviewers come up with conflicts, for example, if one paper say, one reviewer say, this is a minor, the other one says this is reject, and then we may take a look at the paper by ourselves, or maybe we can invite the 3rd person to break the tie, right? So we want to make sure, this is kind of fair game. But in some circumstances, it depends on the seniority, of the reviewer. So if this reviewer really the expert in this field, we know for sure, this person knows this field very well. And then if this person say, this paper, does not contribute much to the literature, and then, maybe just one report can make your paper rejected.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I hope you get that. Thompson, you also raised up your hand. Are you able to speak now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so I know you were talking about, the presenter was talking about making sure that research from Africa is adaptable. Like you maybe do the research in Nigeria or maybe in Ghana, and that should be replicated, or it should be able to be something that should be replicated in other places. So where my question is coming is, most of the time gathering to do Africa in general doesn't have much data in terms of transportation research from my personal findings. So we are only able to gather some data from some kind of limited political location, some geographical areas. So it's difficult for us to really begin to now generalize with that and say this is what may be happening in some other countries in Africa as well. So that's the sense in which I think some of these researches are coming. So can we say, for example, that if I am able to gather some data from Nigeria and then use that data to build something as part of my research, and of course, it's built in a way that it can be adaptable in other countries, even though the data that was used to test that was a bit limited. Are you going to say, are we trying to say that that's not still standard enough or international enough? That's just what I want to know.
No, this is fine. For example, if you have the data, you have data from one particular country, but the phenomenon and the issue exist in other countries. For example, if we see the congestion and the congestion is created by caused by something, and this is applicable to Nigeria, but also is applicable to Ghana. You don't have the data. You don't have to have the data from Ghana, but you just need to say this is kind of the global phenomenon, because other papers, maybe even newspapers, they will talk about kind of the same issues. This issue is not unique to your own country, right? So you want to make sure your work can be generalized, right? So you don't have to use the data to I have the data from Nigeria and they have the data from Ghana, and I'm trying to compare the results from this two studies. This is different, right? You just want to say the issue you study is not unique to your own country, even though you don't have the adequate data for other countries. But apparently, if you have the data from Nigeria, and you come up with some result and also some implication, that's going to help other countries, other African countries, to plan their work.
Well, thank you so much. I've got some questions in the chat. I'm very mindful of the time, but let's just see how we can, maybe you can just quickly answer them. I think Ejiro raised a very valid question, but I think that aligns with the other questions about the quality of work that we are citing. So, Jason, what would you advise if the top journals are not publishing a work from Africa, and can we cite some other papers that are not really top, but they talk about what we are writing about?
For this suggestion is, don't cite all the papers in the 30 journals, right? So that means you could, for example, sometimes if we do not have data, we may cite newspapers, even though, this is not desirable, but, this is the best case we can do, right? Because we don't have data, right? So, in your work, at least we can see, for example, some papers published in the TRATSEDI, maybe transportation, and then, maybe some other very important journals in transportation, and then that's okay. But if you just have all the citations are from kind of 30 journals, and then we know the quality is in trouble, right? So that's the reason I say, we don't require all of them. Just, you need to have some of them are really in the top journals.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. And another question here is, what is the acceptance rate typical for review or meta-analysis papers? So, for example, I'm thinking of a systematic literature review on African transport research, a systematic review. What's the typical acceptance rate? I'm sure some journals seems not to accept it. Some journals accept it. What's your take on that type of article?
Okay, so for the systematic review, because this one,
yes,
you just kind of mapping what's happening in Africa, and in general, if this paper is written for example, United States, or maybe for Europe, or even for China, I don't think we will handle the paper, because because this is a discipline journal, right? So we want to make sure your review is on a critical question, not just mapping what's going on, right? And but I'm not sure about the transport reviews. Whether or not the transport reviews will give some have a different opinion. That's then you need to talk to, for example, Eunice DeVos, and to see his opinion regarding the meta-analysis and the literature review. But for us, we want to see the review on a critical research question, not just to describe what's going on in the field. Because in many times we see a kind of a bibliographic analysis. They say, okay, this year we have this number published, this year I have that number published, and then I have some other, this is the topic we studied, and then we don't see much value of this work, as a journal paper. But if you have done this one just for your own thesis or dissertation, that may be okay. But for the journal, we don't see the value. And also, I have done one study for the TRATSEDI myself, because we want to see what's going on within this field, and then we use but after I did that analysis myself, I found there are a lot of bugs associated with that type of review, and then I try to discourage all of them.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Just the last question. Do you have any incentives for African scholar, maybe in terms of being a reviewer? Do we get 100% waiver on the article processing charges?
This is something you need to talk to the publisher, because as the journal editor, we don't control how you can access the paper. But there's a few ways for you to get some paper. For example, you can send an email to the corresponding author, and then the corresponding author may be willing to share their article to you, because this is for the education purpose. And then I think this is still within the Elsevier's the policy framework. And if you, so as an institution, and then you want to have access to the Elsevier journals, and then the institution need to talk to the Elsevier to make appropriate contract or maybe discount or whatever, right? So that's not our job, because for us, what we do is really to control the quality of work. And then once the paper is accepted, it's out of our hand, right? So that means we don't control other things, in terms of production, in terms of the subscription, and all those things, that's not our job.
That's right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your contribution. It's been a pleasure to hear this insight from you. We really appreciate your time and the effort and the information, especially with regards to the global focus of our research. Even though I might be doing something on Africa, make sure it's global. Thinking of a systematic review, make sure this is something global and people can benefit from. And we have your slide. We hope to share this. But again, thank you so much for sparing this time for us. I know you are very busy. It's a pleasure having you on board, and we hope to be sending more journals to you, more articles to you, and we can have our work in your journal. But on that note, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Jason.
Okay, maybe the final words.
Okay.
As an editor, I really want to see the work from Africa. No matter it's written by the the African scholars, or maybe by the European or the American scholars. We really want to see the work from Africa. And also, it's ideal for us to see a paper written by African scholar, because they live in that land and then they have some personal experience. For example, I could write a paper, with African collaborator, but I have never been there, and then I just learned the contents from the news and from the paper, not my personal experience, and then my understanding could be best. So that's the reason we really welcome the African scholars, to publish in the international journals.
That's fine. Don't worry. Now you have sown a seed, so watch out. We are coming for you. We are coming.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure. We'll be in touch with you when we share the video recording. But again, we just promised for 1 hour, and it's been a pleasure. We keep you posted. So this is from TRATSEDI. So again, if you can follow us on LinkedIn, you keep you posted with what we are doing. And also, if you can subscribe to our email, we will update you with progress of other events. On this note, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. This is Emmanuel. Bye for now.